Okay, it's 10:02 and as promised we will make a start on today's project launch for increasing the take-up of tax-free childcare, funded by HMRC and delivered by Hempsels. My name's James Hempsel. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's online briefing for this new one-year project. I'm chairing today's session and I'll be joined by our project manager, Joe Pringle, who will take us through some of the aspects of the new programme. And this session is for you, so it is designed to enable you to find out more about the work that we'll be doing over the next year and to learn how you can get involved in its work and to support it. Today's being attended by local authority early years and childcare teams from across the UK, from Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland and England. And we should last for about just short of an hour this morning. And as you may have noticed, today's launch is being recorded so that we can share it with those unable to attend today, or you can revisit or indeed share it with your colleagues as well. There will be some slides that we will go through before we break for discussion and chat and questions and answers. And as usual, those will be circulated after today, along with the recording. We do want you to engage in today's session, so do use the chat function and the hands up if you want to say something towards the end of today's session. As I said, make sure you're on mute, would be really useful. Okay, so let's have a look at the structure of today's session then. After the aim and purpose of today's event, we'll just brief word about the work that Hempsels will be doing on the programme, what we have done on tax-free childcare with HMRC before, and what we know about the programme and its impact. We will be detailing the actions that the project contains and setting out how you can get involved. And a key element of today's session is to start the process. Well, I say start, it's already started, and we are continuing the open dialogue with you around what you think so that it's clear and agreed what you can do to support the project's progress. And we'll be helping you to understand what will happen next. The next slide, there is our aim and purpose. We want to tell you about this project. We want to explain our approach and under the aim that it will work best with your involvement. And we want to outline how that might happen. And we will listen and include your thoughts and ideas to help shape the programme further. So do get involved with comments and the chat function. You are more than welcome. So what about Hempsels? Next slide. You may have worked with us before. I can see lots of familiar names on today's delegate list. Many of you have heard of us, or you may be new to Hempsels. Do take a look at the work. We started in 1999 and we've always made it our business to help anyone in early years and childcare and wider children's services to provide children and families with an equal chance, to do what we can to challenge disadvantage and to achieve change. And we've worked on various projects across governments, including the 2-year-old entitlement, 30 hours. We're currently working on half the other holiday activities and food programme. And of course, we're working this year with HMRC on increasing the take-up of tax-free childcare. You can find out more by scanning the QR code or by visiting our website. For us, this project comes at a great time. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to offer social value, not only for families and parents and children, but also the early years and childcare providers with whom we rely upon. It comes at a time when families are seeking out lots of ways to help their household budgets, and when early years and childcare providers are motivated to sustain their businesses in a post-pandemic environment. So what does our team look like for this project? It's a pleasure to lead the team as the strategic lead and contract lead, but I must admit the bulk of the work goes to Joe Pringle, our project manager, who steered successfully our pilot programme earlier in the year. And Joe is supported by our advisor team, Barbara Wilson and Denise Burke. So do feel free to contact the team via info@hempsals.com if you have any comments, questions or requests. You may have received your information today directly or through other partners or colleagues. So do let us know if you want to know about the project directly from us. And so popping that request on the email is a really good way of making that happen. So let's just look back at what we've already done at Hempsals with HMRC on tax-free childcare so far. So during the 2022 pilot phase, which strangely started in 21, we got going about this time last year, actually, in December 21, and we had a 4-month project to the end of March. And then fortunately, that project was extended from April to July. So it has some specific features, a relatively short project, we admit, but originally it was there to work with 10 targeted local areas across the UK to review their current tax-free childcare activities and to develop action plans to increase their take-up, taking a pragmatic view of how we can best make tax-free childcare work in those local communities with providers and with local families and parents. So we took each area through a local review and action planning process called Take 5 with advisor support, which reviewed the work that had already happened, what the current status was, and what easy wins or longer term actions would be beneficial. We delivered 3 national webinars, and I have to say the response to those webinars was absolutely incredible. We were ambitious. We wanted hundreds, if not thousands of people to access those webinars, and everybody met our ambition. The 3 webinars were different. There were 2 for early years and childcare providers across the UK, 1 daytime and 1 twilight session, so we could best fit in with the routines and needs of providers. And 1 webinar was developed and delivered for local councils and family-facing professionals, so people like health visitors, social workers, housing officers, children's centre staff, early help, providers, school teachers, job centre staff. The list was endless. So anybody who was working with families and could play their small part in promoting tax-free childcare with them. The slides and the recordings of those webinars are still available via the Hempsals website, and they're hosted on the Foundation Years website as well. As I said, we had a great response. So we had actually 2,500 people booked onto those webinars, about 1,500 actually attended. We've had many hundreds of recording views for those resources that do remain. So we're confident with that great start that we can further extend even more the reach and the impact of this work. A bit later on in the extension, we worked with 5 more local authorities and introduced a new action learning programme when we looked at how those original 10 had been making progress and sharing that learning and approaches. Because our approach across the whole project, and this will be our mantra for the next year, is to focus on how we can share information, raise people's awareness, and support everyone to take action with tax-free childcare. So we're very delighted to continue that work, and thank you to the department, to HMRC, for commissioning us through a competitive tendering process. So I've got 4 slides actually to update where we might be on tax-free childcare before I hand over to Joe. The first one is a news update. So the next slide, please. There we go. An interesting news update for you is that things are going up. September 22 saw the highest ever level of account use for tax-free childcare and government top-up. Approximately 401,000 families used tax-free childcare for 1,000 children by September 2022. So you can see there are some increases there. So the government spent £44.5 million on top up for families in September. So I think there's some interesting trends up, bearing in mind that we're noticing families seeking out what funded early years and childcare they can access, and looking again at how they can reconcile and find and benefit from additional funding to support their childcare costs. On the next slide, we can see here that children aged 5 and above with used tax-free childcare accounts is substantially lower than those aged 0 to 4. And this is an important reminder that children aged under 11 or until they are age 17, if they have SEND, are eligible for tax-free childcare using all sorts of provision, including childminders, nurseries, playgroups and nannies, as well as after-school clubs and play schemes. So we know that working habits have changed, such as blended working and working from home around a school day, quite considerably as an impact of the pandemic. But it's important to think about how we might use this opportunity to raise the profile of tax-free childcare with families of school-aged children, and encouraging schools and holiday activity and wraparound provision and after-school providers to sign up for tax-free childcare, and explain and demonstrate the financial benefits in a simple but clear message to both parents and providers. On the next slide, we have a linked factor is that the number of families and children using tax-free childcare dropped in summer holidays. Now, obviously, childcare patterns do change significantly in families when we are in school holiday periods, but childcare needs do not go away. Any out-of-school childcare provider will tell you that. Any parent will tell you that. And there's been significant challenges in the out-of-school sector as a result of the economic conditions, but also as a result of the impacts and effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I can assure you that out-of-school providers are ready, willing and able to deliver more childcare across those periods, and tax-free childcare will be a key enabler of that. Of course, this slide acknowledges all sorts of observations around employment has changed, with people's flexible and term time working being affected. It acknowledges the supply, it acknowledges the requirement of a whole range of activity providers in the holidays that should be registered with Ofsted so that parents can claim their tax-free childcare. So there are definitely opportunities here to promote the use of tax-free childcare in school holidays, support providers to register for and offer it, and to look at exploring different stretch models across the whole piece. Because this whole programme does rely upon us raising the profile of tax-free childcare with families and with providers and with family-facing professionals. And my final slide looks at the issues around self-employed users and families with disabled children. Self-employed parents and families are eligible for tax-free childcare, and indeed 52,800 families claimed in September. And there were 3,700 disabled children benefiting from tax-free childcare in the same month. So it's really important that we consider how we review communication strategy to ensure they reach and engage with families with children with SEND and the self-employed. So, Joe, why don't you tell us what we're all going to be doing in 2023?
No problem at all. Thank you very much, James. And as James has alluded to, our project aims are very much around recognising that September saw the highest ever level of account usage and government top-up, but actually there are our observations and then there are the opportunities that we highlight. And this project is very much around how we can achieve those opportunities, take advantage of those opportunities to support the increase of tax-free childcare. So the project really builds on everything that we've done previously. It's about engaging local authorities and councils, childcare providers and family-facing professionals to actually better help understand tax-free childcare. A key part will be supporting 33 local authorities to develop action plans to increase take-up amongst their parents and childcare providers. But it goes much further than that. It goes around supporting everybody else as well, and it'll make sense as we go through. And obviously the learning, the discussions, our work with you will all help inform the future of tax-free childcare and the actions and support HMRC. So our next slide takes us to our building on the pilot to extend learning across the UK. So whilst we've worked and we continue to work with a wider number, key part of this year will be spreading that learning as wide as we possibly can, so that we're providing information, increasing awareness and understanding of tax-free childcare, as James mentioned earlier. So let's look at the next slide and specific project activities. We will work with 33 new local authorities, 22 across England, Wales and Scotland, and working with the group that we established and hopefully building on that with Northern Ireland to reach the 11 local authorities in Northern Ireland, as it's a different setup. We're going to review next and work with our pilots to look at next steps. So it's about building on what went before and looking at what we can do next. We're really excited to be able to offer 5 regional face-to-face meetings in England. Those will very much reflect some of the in the areas that we worked previously. So we know where local authorities can get to. We know where English local authorities are able to travel to. So we will spend a day looking at the work of the targeted work, but spreading that out with everyone else across the rest of the English local authorities. And a key part of what we also wanted to achieve was ensuring that the learning that happens in Wales and Scotland is shared wider as well. So we will, through discussions with teams in both devolved governments, be looking at how we can, on a termly basis, bring wider local authorities in Wales and Scotland together to learn from the work that is happening with the local authorities within those areas as it's going along, but making sure that we are reaching as the biggest audience that we can. There'll also be four Zoom webinars, and I'll look at those in a moment in a little bit more detail. So if we go on to our next slide and just look at that top bit, the targeted work, we've got 5 local authorities in Scotland, 5 local authorities in Wales, 12 which will be split into 2 groups across England, and then working with the group we established in the pilot, hopefully be reaching the providers and the local authority staff, but also parents across the 11 local authority areas in Northern Ireland. We have looked at data with HMRC, and we will be writing to the 12 local authorities, or the 12 local authorities in the first instance, and we will be inviting the English local authorities to participate. That hopefully will happen by the end of this week, if not early next week, but definitely ahead of the Christmas break. And we'll be setting up meetings with Scotland and Wales to give them our proposed based on the data, but also to co-produce what that looks like to ensure that happens. We're already engaged with colleagues in Northern Ireland, and I've got my second meeting with the group, with the team again this afternoon, to look at what that's going to look like and what that work will look like across Northern Ireland. So what the targeted work will look like on our next slide. We start off as a large group, and we will bring all local authorities that are engaged in the targeted work together at the start of 23. We will then split into a series of action learning sets, 1 Wales, 1 Scotland, 2 England, and then they will work through a process that very much focuses on stakeholder engagement, reaching and engaging parents, and motivating providers. Those are spread between February and May. To assist that, and recognising that local authorities will come to the table in very different positions with the work that they've done, with the teams that they've got, with the time that they're able to put into that, we will have the ability to support local authorities through regular check-ins, advisor access to myself, Denise and Barbara, and where necessary, and quite exciting once again, potentially of on-site visits as well. The aim of this being that by the time we get to July and before September, somewhere within there, based on what local authorities need to achieve, we will have our action plans. This process very much builds on the Take 5 that we used previously, and that we know that local authorities were able to use and were able to generate that change and that action. So by the end of the process, local authorities, we hope, will have their completed Take 5, which isn't about achieving by September. It's about having that plan of action. It's about being clear as to what is achievable, the little wins, the big wins, and maybe what is going to take a little bit longer to achieve what they need to achieve. We'll then come back together in September for a real information sharing, celebrating successes and looking at what has been achieved across the whole group as a UK-wide group again in September. So quite a long time to achieve it, recognising that by the time we get to the end, some of those actions will have been achieved, but having worked through the pilot process, and I can see a couple of faces on here that were part of our pilot, recognising that some things need a lot longer to achieve. So, you know, this time needs to be allocated to that. On our next slide, we're hoping that by the time we get to those signed off action plans Take 5 process, is that the plan will have and local authority will be left with a focused approach to stakeholder engagement. There'll be an action plan to support providers to actively engage in the take-up of tax-free childcare, and a strategy to support families to understand tax-free childcare and apply for it. This process we will also be including within the work that we do with the face-to-face meetings and also with the online meetings with the devolved in Wales and in Scotland as well. So whilst we won't be necessarily working on a one-to-one basis through Take 5 with every local authority, there will be an option to have the tool, to use the tool, and we will go through the principles of the tool so that everyone can go through the process should they wish to, should they want to use this as a process for taking their plans for tax-free childcare further and increasing their own take-up. For the local authorities that we worked with previously, on the next slide you'll see that we've created Take 5 Plus. And Take 5 Plus really gives the opportunity for the local authorities to come back together, to work with us as a team, to revisit, to check in, and to think about next stages, to refresh that action planning. So an opportunity to go back to the original work that we did, to look at how it's gone, what's worked, what else could we do. But it's also about capturing the impact, outcomes, and extending those actions. So we're really keen to find out from those that are further down the line, that have more established plans, what worked. What should we be including in our wider work now with local authorities, in our wider work, but also in the next stage of our pilot work. And we also want to provide an opportunity to bring that group back together in termly peer support meetings, because we know that from the action planning process that we used the first time, bringing people together is a real great peer opportunity to hear, to support, and to share those learning and successes. So that's our target work. What sits outside of that is the wider support for local authorities, as I've said, that comes through the online, termly online sessions in Wales and Scotland, and the cluster face-to-face meetings within England. But the other bit that sits on top of that is, on the next slide, is our 4 free Zoom webinars. Webinars will be February, April, June and September, so they will be spread out across the year. They are very much to promote the effectiveness of business planning alongside practical strategies to maximise demand for early years services, and there will be a specific, well, obviously a specific focus on tax-free childcare. At the moment, we have a plan for the first one, but we would very much will be taking the learning, the discussions and how the year progresses and what we learn from our pilot, what we learn from our initial action planning to inform the content as we move through from February to April, from June through to September. These webinars will be wider. They will look at our reach to front-facing professionals, for wider stakeholders and for providers as well. So looking at how we take it beyond the local authority teams to that much wider audience. Outcomes of our webinars, very much based on the work we've done previously, and the next slide indicates that we're looking at how we improve how tax-free childcare information is promoted and is widening reach. So what are our messages? It's around encouraging verbal interactive information sharing, so that word of mouth. How do we get messages out there so parents are promoting to parents, and family facing professionals can confidently talk when they're having those discussions about whatever it is and however they're engaging with families, about how tax-free childcare can reduce the cost, but also support at the moment with increasing costs as we go. It's around building ways to increase motivational behaviours and solution achieving interactions, making things feel possible. And I know in discussions I have with business support with providers that, you know, how seeing tax-free childcare as an integrated part of their business planning, in the same way as understanding how universal credit reduces, or the element of that reduces the cost of childcare, should be integral in when they're thinking about fees and fee structures. That it's all about improving the understanding, busting those myths, being clear, you know, easy to use, simple language, so that everyone improves, has that improved understanding. And again, demonstrating the financial benefits, both for families and childcare providers. One of the observations that comes through in research, and that comes through as a possible reason why take up drops in the summer, is that families don't necessarily use holiday childcare, or don't necessarily think that the savings they'll make with tax-free childcare on their holiday clubs is significant for what might be a perceived barrier and a difficult thing to do. But also, I think there's huge scope out there for tax-free childcare in the wider than childcare market. With my holiday and activities and food hat on, there's a whole market of activity providers as well, who, if we can break some of the myths about Ofsted registration, that we can potentially ensure that any family using holiday activity, childcare, to meet their particular needs can be benefiting. Therefore, one of the aims being to ensure that we're motivating providers and families to sign up, taking advantage of those opportunities that we identified in those early slides. So, how can you get involved? Well, you're already here, so you already are involved. We're recording the session and we will be sending this out. So as James has said, it's there for you to share wider. We'll be letting people who weren't able to attend view and catch up, so they have the same information as you. We've, during this work, have built up our database and our contact list of family-facing professionals, early years and childcare providers, and we've got an extensive list, but actually you as local authorities have got those direct links through your regular contact, through your normal communication routes. And when we come to promote webinars and sessions, we'd be really, really keen, as you've done previously for us, to support us with that. We hope that you will attend and contribute to the cluster meetings. I am really looking forward to local authorities in England being able to see legs again. rather than just top halves, and it will be great to see you face to face. And I'm really looking forward to being able to spend time online with colleagues from both Wales and Scotland at those online updates. Hopefully, if you receive an email from me this week, beginning of next week, to be invited to join the targeted programme, you will do. Absolutely do understand if the time's not right or if it's not right for you. If you could just let me know so I can let somebody else have an opportunity, that would be absolutely brilliant. But you will hear from me in the very near future. How else can you get involved? On our next slide, please attend our live webinars, share the recordings through your networks, websites, etc., as we've suggested. We're really keen, and we absolutely recognise that whilst we've been working with some local authorities and have seen many of you through our webinars and the things that we've been doing, that many of you have already and have continued to do other things to promote take-up and raise what's going on in your local authority areas. So we're really keen to also harness some of that, whether that be through you as an English local authority, where you've got something that we can share at our face-to-face meetings, or if you're from Wales or Scotland, that we can actually showcase and use what you have done and what you've found that works within those sessions as well. So please pop anything that you have done in the chat bar or send us an email. You can send that through and we'd really be pleased to hear. And I suppose now I'm going to hand back to James, because now what we also want to do is to understand your views and ideas about what you think would be useful. I know that's a lot of information, and I know that we've put an awful lot in a very short space of time. But hopefully, if you have any questions, any queries, or things that you think would be useful, now's the opportunity to share that with us, and we'd love to hear your views.
Thank you very much, Joe, and we'll give everyone a few moments to think about questions and comments and pop those on the chat, or indeed put hands up